That's my good friend Nicolle Flint. Nicolle, you've just heard what Catherine Deves has said. You've heard the statistics that I've read out. Isn't it time for a rethink about transgenders in women's sport, and particularly mostly from a safety and a performance aspect?
Yes, Cory, absolutely, I agree. And I want to start by acknowledging all of the incredible work that my good friend and colleague, Senator Chair Claire Chandler from Tasmania is doing in this area. Claire has been a fierce advocate for women's safety, particularly in sport. So the situation at the moment is that Sports Australia released their inclusivity guidelines in 2019 and then left it up to each individual sporting code to implement those guidelines as they saw fit. I think that we need to use the opportunity of hosting the Olympics in 2032 in Brisbane to start working now to make sure that women's safety and women's ability to compete on a completely level playing field is in place at the very latest at the 2032 Olympics.
Yeah, but leaving it to individual sports, Nicolle, will allow, the wokeness that captures some of these organisations to do whatever the heck they like. If they want to start a trans league, that's something, and the punters can support it if that's what they want to do. But what about the poor women that are there? Now, I've got to jump into this because I'm a bit cut for time. You mentioned Claire Chandler, another senator from Tasmania, this one a Labor senator, Carol Brown. She gave a speech this week saying Laurel Hubbard, that was the transgender weightlifter, exemplifies the Olympic spirit. Have a listen to it.
Laurel Hubbard exemplifies the Olympic spirit and should be celebrated as an Olympian without the question marks Senator Chandler and her ilk would seek to put on this status. This should not have to be continually said, but for Senator Chandler's benefit, I'll state it for the record. Trans men are men. Trans women are women. Non-binary people are non-binary, and their gender identities are valid, and they should not have to tolerate blatant discrimination unchallenged in this place.
Now, Nicolle, I bet that speech hasn't been censored by YouTube because even though it denies biological reality, but have we ever seen better proof the Australian Labor Party intends to actually destroy women's sex-based rights? And that's what I think she's just belled the cat on there.
I think she absolutely has, Cory. So just to be clear, I do think there is a role for federal Parliament and the federal government to play in this issue. And as I said, we need to work towards that coming up to the 2032 Olympics in Brisbane, because at the moment, sporting codes, it's left up to them. So they decide to do whatever they want, whatever they deem appropriate for their code. I think that the federal government does need to take a leadership role. I'll be working with Claire Chandler and other colleagues who are very passionate about this issue to make sure that women have a fair go on the sporting field. And there was a very significant study that has come out of Sweden that was released in the context of the current Tokyo Olympics, and it said that there has to be a choice between fairness or inclusivity. You cannot have both. To my mind, and this goes to the Tasmanian Labor Senator's speech, you can't have both. And if you want to choose fairness, which is actually the point of the Olympics, it's, the person who's done the most preparation, who's trained the hardest, who's the best person on the day to win, then you have to make sure that people are playing on a level playing field. That's the whole point. So that's the fairness point. You can't have fairness and inclusivity. The other really key thing in this Swedish study was that it showed that after a year of hormone therapy on men at an elite sports level, they only lose 5% of muscle mass and strength. So how on earth can women possibly ever compete with a bloke who has essentially been doping their body for 20 or maybe 30 years before they transition, meaning that their bone density and their muscle mass is so much more than women can ever achieve?
Yeah, it's the physiological things that I went through, the heart, the ability to pump more blood and oxygen through the angles of your legs so that you can run faster with less pain. A whole range of facts are being denied by these gender bender zealots who are determined to destroy men and women. Anyway, Nicolle Flint, thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate your insights, and I know our viewers too. You're always a welcome guest on Bernardi. Thanks for tonight.